You know that feeling when your whole world comes crashing down in front of everyone you love? Yeah, well, that was me last Thursday night at my parents' house, sitting around the mahogany dining table that's been in our family for 3 generations. My name's Jessica, and I'm about to tell you the most insane story of betrayal, revenge, and sweet, sweet justice that'll make your jaw drop. So picture this. It's our monthly family dinner in suburban Chicago. Mom's made her famous pot roast. Dad's telling his usual dad jokes. And my sister Claire, oh sweet, innocent Claire, is sitting there with that smug little smile she's perfected since we were kids. She's always been the golden child, you know? The one who could do no wrong, while I was the black sheep who dared to start my own business instead of following the safe corporate path. So Jess, Claire says, cutting into her meat with way too much precision, how's the consulting business going? I heard through the grapevine that things have been challenging. The way she said challenging made my skin crawl, like she was savoring every syllable. But I kept my cool, forced a smile, and said, "Oh, you know how it is. Business has its ups and downs." That's when she dropped the bomb that changed everything. "Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news," she continued, her voice dripping with fake concern, "but everyone at the country club is talking about how you filed for bankruptcy last month. I mean, I tried to defend you, but the paperwork is public record, so..." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom dropped her fork. Dad's face went pale, and I felt like I was going to throw up right there on Mom's pristine tablecloth. The worst part? She was right. I had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after my biggest client screwed me over and refused to pay a $200,000 invoice. But how the hell did she know? "Claire," Dad said slowly, his voice tight with disappointment. "Is this true?" Before I could even process what was happening, Claire was already moving in for the kill. "I'm so sorry, Daddy. I know you were considering helping Jess with that down payment for the house on Maple Street, but obviously that's off the table now. I mean, you can't throw good money after bad, right?" And there it was, the house on Maple Street, the beautiful Victorian that I'd been dreaming about for 2 years, the one that Claire had been begging Dad to help her buy for months, the same house she'd been showing off to all her friends on Instagram, calling it her future dream home. What Claire didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 3 days earlier, I had already bought that house, with cash. Every last penny from a secret investment account I'd been building for 5 years, plus the insurance money from when my ex-husband totaled my car last year. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just sat there, watching my sister destroy my reputation while simultaneously trying to manipulate our father into giving her my dream house. The audacity was actually impressive, in the most twisted way possible. "I understand, Dad," I said quietly, standing up from the table. "I think I should go." The drive home was a blur of rage and heartbreak, but also something else. Determination. See, Claire had made one crucial mistake. She assumed I was down and out, that I was weak and broken. She had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to my limit. And boy, was she about to find out. Hey guys, if you're loving this drama already, smash that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, this story is just getting started, and you're not going to want to miss what happens next. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because Claire's world is about to get turned completely upside down. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. But first, I needed to understand exactly how Claire had gotten her information about my bankruptcy. Because here's the thing about my sister. She's always been sneaky, but she's not exactly the brightest bulb in the chandelier, if you know what I mean. I called my lawyer, Marcus, who'd handled my bankruptcy filing. "Marcus, I need to know who's been accessing my bankruptcy records." "Jess, those are public records. Anyone can look them up online." "But would Claire even know how to do that? She still calls me when she can't figure out how to update her iPhone." There was a pause. "You think someone fed her the information?" "I know someone did. The question is who." That afternoon, I drove to Claire's real estate office in downtown Naperville. She works for Pinnacle Properties, one of those fancy agencies that deals with million-dollar homes and clients who think they're better than everyone else. Perfect fit for my sister, honestly. I parked across the street and waited. Sure enough, around 3 p.m., I saw Claire come out of the building with someone I recognized immediately, David Chen, my former business partner. The same David Chen who'd been pressuring me to sell my shares in our old company for months. The same David who'd conveniently forgotten to tell me about the client who was planning to stiff us on that $200,000 payment. They were laughing. walking toward that pretentious coffee shop that charges $8 for a latte. I followed them, keeping my distance, and managed to grab a table close enough to hear their conversation without being noticed. "So, the bankruptcy thing worked perfectly," Claire was saying, stirring her oat milk macchiato. Dad was horrified. "There's no way he's going to help her with any house now," David smirked. "And you're sure he'll help you instead? Please. I'm the responsible daughter, remember? Always have been. Jess has been a disappointment since high school." This is just the final nail in the coffin. My hands were shaking as I listened to them plot my downfall like it was some kind of game. But the worst part was yet to come. "The timing couldn't be better," Claire continued. "That house on Maple Street is going back on the market tomorrow. The previous buyers fell through. Some kind of financing issue. I already told Dad about it, and he's going to make an offer this weekend." David leaned back in his chair, looking pleased with himself. "And Jess has no idea that you know about the house. None whatsoever. She's been so secretive about her house hunting. Probably embarrassed that she can't afford anything decent in this market. But I've been tracking her online activity for months. Every Zillow search, every real estate website she visits. I know exactly what she's been looking at." I almost choked on my own saliva. "How?" Claire's laugh was cold and calculating. "Family computer plan, sweetie. I've been getting notifications of her browsing history sent to my email since last Christmas. She has no idea. That's when everything clicked into place. The way Claire always seemed to know things about my life that I'd never told anyone. How she'd show up at restaurants I'd mentioned wanting to try. Or how she'd coincidentally be shopping at the same stores I'd been researching online. She'd been cyberstalking me for over a year. But here's what made me smile, even as my blood was boiling. They had no idea that the house they were talking about was already mine. The financing issue that fell through, that was just the seller's way of getting out of a contract with a difficult buyer, so they could sell to me instead, for cash, with a quick closing. I owned the house. I had the keys in my purse, and tomorrow, when they went to make their offer, they were going to get the shock of their lives. As I sat there listening to my sister and my former business partner celebrate what they thought was my defeat, I realized something important. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about years of manipulation, betrayal, and underestimation. Claire had been playing games with my life, but she'd been playing checkers while I was about to show her what chess looked like. I quietly left the coffee shop and drove straight to Home Depot. If I was going to make a statement, I was going to do it right. By the time I was done shopping, my trunk was full of sold signs, security cameras, and everything I needed to turn my new house into the perfect stage for the most epic revenge reveal in family history. Claire thought she knew me, but she was about to learn that the sister she'd been underestimating her whole life had been saving the best for last. Saturday morning arrived with that crisp October air that makes Chicago suburbs look like a postcard. I was up at 6 a.m., not because I had to be, but because I was too excited to sleep. Today was the day Claire and Dad were supposed to make their offer on my house, and I had a front row seat to watch it all unfold. I'd spent Friday evening setting up security cameras around the property, not just for the show, but because I genuinely wanted to see their faces when they realized what had happened. I'd also hired a moving company to bring over some of my furniture, just enough to make it obvious that someone was already living there. The house itself is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. 3 stories of Victorian charm on a tree-lined street that looks like something out of a Hallmark movie. Original hardwood floors, a wraparound porch, and a kitchen that would make Gordon Ramsay weep with joy. The kind of place Claire had been posting about on Instagram with captions like, "Manifesting my dream home," and "Claiming this energy." Well, guess what, sis? I claimed it first. Around 10 a.m., I positioned myself at the Starbucks down the street with a perfect view of the house. I'd brought my laptop so I could watch the security camera feeds in real time while also seeing the action unfold in person. Best of both worlds. At exactly 11:15, Dad's silver Mercedes pulled up to the curb, followed by Claire's white BMW. I watched through my binoculars as they got out, Claire practically bouncing with excitement. She was wearing her serious business outfit, the navy blazer she always wore when she wanted to impress Dad, paired with those ridiculous heels that made her walk like a newborn giraffe. They met with the real estate agent on the sidewalk, a woman I recognized from the photos on the listing. I could see Claire gesturing animatedly at the house, probably going into her rehearsed speech about how this was the perfect family home, and how she'd always dreamed of raising her future children here. The agent looked confused, checking her phone and then her paperwork. Even from across the street, I could tell something was wrong. She kept shaking her head and pointing at the house, then back at her documents. That's when I saw Dad pull out his phone and make a call, probably to his bank, getting ready to wire the money for the down payment. Oh, this was going to be good. The agent led them up to the front door, and I switched to the security camera feed on my laptop. The audio was crystal clear. I'd invested in the good stuff. "I'm so sorry," the agent was saying, "but there seems to be some confusion. This property is no longer available. It sold 3 days ago." Claire's face went through about 5 different emotions in the span of 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, anger, and then back to confusion. That's impossible. I was just here yesterday, and it was still on the market. "Ma'am, I understand this is disappointing, but the sale was finalized on Wednesday. The new owner has already moved in." Dad stepped forward, his voice taking on that authoritative tone he uses when he's about to throw money at a problem. "There must be some mistake. My daughter has been planning to purchase this property. Surely we can work something out with the current owner." The agent looked genuinely sympathetic. "I'm afraid not, sir. The sale was cash, no contingencies, and it's already been recorded with the county. The new owner seems to be settling in quite nicely." That's when Claire noticed the moving truck in the driveway and the furniture visible through the windows. Her perfectly applied makeup was starting to crack along with her composure. "Who bought it?" she demanded. "I want to talk to them. I'm not at liberty to share that information, but I can tell you that all the legal requirements have been met. The property is no longer available." I was practically vibrating with anticipation. This was better than any soap opera I'd ever watched. But the best part was still coming. Claire pulled out her phone and started frantically typing, probably texting David or posting some dramatic message on social media about how unfair life was. But then she did something that made my blood run cold. She started walking around the house, peering into windows, trying to get a look at who was inside. The entitlement was staggering. Dad was following her, looking more embarrassed by the minute, but not stopping her either. "Claire, honey, maybe we should go look at other properties," he said gently. "No," she snapped. "This is my house, Dad. I've been planning this for months. Someone stole it from me." Stole it? The audacity was actually impressive. She'd been planning to manipulate our father into buying her a house that she'd never even made an offer on. And somehow I was the thief. That's when I decided it was time to make my entrance. I closed my laptop, grabbed my keys, and started walking across the street. I had a spare key to my own house after all, and it was time to introduce myself to my unexpected visitors. As I approached the group, I could see the exact moment Claire recognized me. Her face went from entitled anger to pure confusion, and then to something that looked almost like fear. "Jess?" she said, her voice cracking. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, pulling my keys out of my purse and holding them up so the house key was clearly visible. "Oh, just checking on my new place, making sure the movers didn't scratch the hardwood floors." The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. You know that moment in movies when everything goes into slow motion? When the music stops and you can practically hear everyone's heartbeat? That's exactly what it felt like standing on the sidewalk in front of my house, watching my family's faces as they processed what I'd just said. Dad was the first to break the silence. Your house?" I jangled the keys again, letting the sound sink in. "Yep. Closed on Wednesday. Cash sale. No financing needed." I looked directly at Claire when I said that last part, watching her face go 3 different shades of pale. The real estate agent looked like she wanted to disappear into the sidewalk. I'll just head back to my car. Call me if you need anything, Mr. Morrison." She practically ran away from what was clearly about to become a family explosion. Claire found her voice first, which honestly didn't surprise me. She's always been quick with the comebacks, even when she's been caught red-handed. "That's impossible," she sputtered. "You filed for bankruptcy. You don't have money for a house. You can't even afford to keep your business running." "Oh, sweetheart," I said, my voice dripping with the same fake sweetness she'd used at dinner. "There's a lot you don't know about my financial situation. Bankruptcy doesn't mean what you think it means, especially Chapter 11. It's actually a pretty smart business move when you know what you're doing." Dad was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Jessica, how did you afford this? This house is worth at least $800,000. Actually, it's worth $850,000. I paid $825,000, cash, because I was a serious buyer with no contingencies." I started walking toward the front door, forcing them to follow me if they wanted to continue this conversation. "Would you like a tour?" I've got the most amazing coffee maker in the kitchen. I could hear Claire's heels clicking frantically on the pavement behind me as she tried to keep up. This doesn't make sense. David said you were broke. He said the bankruptcy was because you couldn't pay your debts. There it was. The confirmation I'd been waiting for. I stopped walking and turned around to face her. David said that, did he? And when exactly did you and David have this conversation about my private financial information? The look on Claire's face was priceless. Pure panic mixed with the dawning realization that she'd just confessed to something she shouldn't have known. He mentioned it in passing. At the country club. Bullshit. I crossed my arms and stared her down. David doesn't go to your country club, Claire. He thinks places like that are pretentious and elitist. His exact words, not mine. So try again. Dad was looking back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match. What's going on here? Claire, how do you know David? Claire's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She was scrambling, trying to come up with a lie that would make sense, but she'd painted herself into a corner. We've been working together, she finally admitted. He came to me a few months ago, asking about real estate investments. We became friends. Friends who discuss my private business information, I said coldly. Friends who plan how to manipulate our father into buying you a house by using my bankruptcy as leverage. That's not... Oh, but it is. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. See, here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life, Claire. People think you're not paying attention. They think you're too stupid or too trusting to notice when they're plotting against you. I hit play, and the sound of Claire's voice filled the air. So the bankruptcy thing worked perfectly. Dad was horrified. There's no way he's going to help her with any house now. The color drained completely from Claire's face. Dad looked like someone had slapped him. You recorded us? Claire whispered. I recorded you admitting to cyber-stalking me, manipulating our father, and conspiring with my former business partner to destroy my reputation. Yeah, I sure did. I scrolled through my phone. Want to hear the part where you talk about tracking my browsing history? Or maybe the part where David explains how he fed you the bankruptcy information? Dad's voice was barely controlled when he spoke. Claire, is this true? Daddy, I can explain. Is it true? The single word hung in the air like a sword. Dad's disappointment was palpable, and for the first time in my life, it wasn't directed at me. Claire started crying, which had always been her go-to move when she got caught doing something wrong. The crocodile tears that had gotten her out of trouble countless times throughout our childhood. But this time was different. This time, Dad wasn't rushing to comfort her. He was staring at her like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. How long? He asked quietly. How long what? How long have you been spying on your sister? How long have you been manipulating our family dinners with information you shouldn't have? I could see the exact moment Claire realized that her usual tactics weren't going to work. That Daddy wasn't going to swoop in and fix this for her. That she was going to have to face the consequences of her actions for once in her privileged life. I was trying to protect you, she said desperately. Jess has always been reckless with money. I thought if you knew the truth about her business, you wouldn't make the mistake of lending her money she couldn't pay back. Protect me? Dad's voice was getting louder. By lying to me? By invading your sister's privacy? By manipulating me into thinking she was a failure so I'd buy you a house instead? That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened, I interjected. But here's the plot twist, sis. The bankruptcy was strategic. I filed Chapter 11 to reorganize my debt and buy myself time to collect on the money I was owed. It's a business tactic, not a failure. And while you were busy trying to destroy my reputation, I was quietly building a nest egg that just bought me my dream house. I dangled the keys one more time. Cash, you want to see inside? I asked, gesturing toward the front door. Since you've been stalking my real estate searches for months, I figured you might be curious about the actual house. Dad nodded slowly, still looking shell-shocked by everything that had just been revealed. Claire was wiping mascara from under her eyes, probably trying to salvage what was left of her dignity. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the foyer, breathing in that new house smell mixed with the vanilla candles I'd been burning to make the place feel like home. The afternoon sunlight was streaming through the original stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the restored hardwood floors. Holy shit, Dad whispered, then immediately looked embarrassed for swearing. Sorry, honey. This place is incredible. It really was. The previous owners had done a complete restoration, keeping all the Victorian charm while updating everything that mattered. Modern electrical, new plumbing, but original crown molding, and built-in bookcases that were older than our grandfather. Claire was trailing behind us, unusually quiet. She kept looking around like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. This was supposed to be her house, her Instagram backdrop, her symbol of success. Instead, it was mine. "The kitchen's through here," I said, leading them through the dining room with its original chandelier and into the heart of the house. "I had the movers bring over my espresso machine this morning. Anyone want coffee?" The kitchen was a masterpiece of modern functionality, wrapped in old-world charm. White marble countertops, a farmhouse sink, and a 6-burner gas range that I'd been dreaming about for years. I'd already stocked the fridge and arranged fresh flowers on the island. Dad was running his hands along the countertops, shaking his head in amazement. "Jess, this must have cost a fortune to restore. The previous owners did most of the work. I just had to buy it." I started making coffee, enjoying the familiar ritual in my new space. Want to know the funny thing? This house has been on and off the market for 2 years. Every time someone would put in an offer, something would fall through. Bad inspections, financing issues, buyer's remorse. The sellers were getting desperate. I pulled 3 mugs from the cabinet. Yes, I'd already unpacked the important stuff, and continued my story. So when I showed up 3 weeks ago with a cash offer, and no contingencies, they practically threw the keys at me. We closed in 10 days. I looked at Claire. Which, by the way, was the same day you were at the coffee shop with David, planning how to convince Dad to buy this place for you. Claire finally found her voice. "How did you have that much cash? Even if the bankruptcy was strategic, you still had to pay lawyers and fees. Your business was failing." "My business wasn't failing, Claire. One client defaulted on a major payment, which created a cash flow problem. There's a difference." I handed her a mug of coffee, watching her hands shake slightly as she took it. "But I've had other revenue streams that you didn't know about." "Like what?" I smiled. "Remember that tech startup I consulted for 3 years ago? The one you said was a waste of time because they were just some kids with a computer?" Dad's eyes widened. "The app company? Bingo. They gave me equity instead of cash for part of my fee. I thought it was a fun gamble." I took a sip of my coffee, savoring both the taste and the moment. "They sold to Google last year for $50 million. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Claire looked like she was going to be sick. "My shares were worth $2.3 million after taxes," I continued casually. "I've been living off my consulting income and letting that money grow in investments. This house is basically paid for with Google money." Dad started laughing. Not a happy laugh, but the kind of laugh you let out when the universe reveals just how wrong you've been about everything. "So, let me get this straight," he said, setting down his coffee mug. "While Claire was spying on you and trying to convince me you were broke, you were actually a millionaire? Multi-millionaire, technically. The Google money was just the biggest chunk. I've had some other lucky breaks over the years." I shrugged. "I learned early on to keep my financial success quiet. People treat you differently when they know you have money." Claire was staring at me like I was a complete stranger. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you what? That I was doing well? When would I have done that, Claire? During one of our family dinners where you spent the whole time critiquing my life choices? Or maybe during one of your phone calls where you checked in on me by fishing for information about my problems?" I moved to the kitchen window that looked out over the backyard. My backyard now, with its mature oak trees and professionally landscaped garden. I was going to tell everyone eventually. I was actually planning to surprise you all with a housewarming party once I got settled in. But then Thursday happened. "Thursday?" Dad asked. "The night Claire decided to humiliate me at dinner by announcing my bankruptcy to the family. The night she tried to manipulate you into thinking I was a failure so you'd buy her this house instead." I turned back to face them. That's when I realized that my sister wasn't just thoughtless or insensitive. She was actively working against me. Claire's tears were starting up again, but this time they looked more genuine. Less manipulation, more actual remorse. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know about the Google thing. I thought you were actually struggling, and I was worried about Dad losing money on a bad investment." "Bullshit," I said firmly. "If you were worried about Dad's money, you would have talked to him privately. You wouldn't have humiliated me in front of the whole family. And you definitely wouldn't have been planning to take advantage of my supposed financial problems to get yourself a free house." Dad was nodding slowly. "She's right, Claire. This wasn't about protecting me. This was about getting what you wanted." The kitchen fell quiet except for the sound of the coffee maker finishing its cycle and the distant noise of my neighbors mowing their lawns. Normal suburban sounds in my new suburban life, but we weren't done yet. Not by a long shot. "There's more," I said, refilling my coffee mug and settling against the kitchen island. The David situation goes deeper than just sharing my bankruptcy information. Claire looked up from her coffee, mascara still smudged under her eyes. What do you mean? I mean, your boyfriend has been systematically sabotaging my business for months, and you've been helping him do it. He's not my boyfriend, Claire protested quickly. Too quickly. Dad raised an eyebrow. Then what is he? I pulled out my phone again and scrolled to a folder I'd labeled Evidence. Yeah, I'm that organized when I'm planning revenge. David and I started our consulting firm together 5 years ago, I explained to Dad. We were 50-50 partners, but I did most of the actual work while he handled business development. Everything was fine until about 8 months ago, when he started pushing me to sell my shares to him. I found the screenshot I was looking for and handed my phone to Dad. These are text messages between David and Claire from 6 months ago. Notice the dates. Dad squinted at the screen, reading aloud. The client is wavering on the big contract. If Jess screws this up, she'll be desperate to sell. That's from David. He scrolled down. I'm working on Dad. He's already worried about her business. This could be perfect timing. That's from you, Claire. Claire's face went white. How did you get those? When you've been tracking someone's digital footprint for months, you leave traces, I said coldly. I hired a forensic accountant to help me figure out why my business was suddenly struggling. Turns out someone had been feeding negative information about me to potential clients. I took my phone back and pulled up another folder. David had been telling people that I was unreliable, that my business was failing, that they should work with him directly instead of going through our partnership. He was essentially trying to steal my clients while simultaneously driving down the value of my shares in the company. That's illegal, Dad said, his voice tight with anger. It's also stupid, I continued, because I had documentation of every client interaction, every contract, every payment. When I filed for Chapter 11, it wasn't just to reorganize my debt. It was to buy myself time to gather evidence and expose what David was doing. Claire was shaking her head. I didn't know he was doing that. I thought he was just concerned about working with someone who was having financial problems. Really? Because here's a text from you to David from last month. Jess still doesn't suspect anything. She thinks the client problems are just bad luck. This is working better than we hoped. The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Dad was staring at Claire like he'd never seen her before. There's more, I said. Because why stop now? David has been trying to poach my employees, offering them jobs at below market rates, with promises that they'd get raises once he took over my client base. He also tried to access my business bank accounts by claiming he needed to help me manage my cash flow problems. I pulled up another screenshot. And here's my personal favorite, a text from Claire to David saying, once Dad cuts Jess off financially, she'll have to sell to you for whatever you're willing to pay. It's genius. Dad's coffee mug hit the counter with a sharp crack. Claire Elizabeth Morrison. What the hell is wrong with you? It was the first time I'd ever heard my father use that tone with Claire. Ever. In 32 years of watching her get away with everything, this was the moment she finally pushed him too far. I was trying to help, she said desperately. David said Jess was going to lose everything anyway, and at least this way she'd get something for her shares instead of losing it all to bankruptcy. By manipulating me into cutting off my other daughter, by destroying her reputation, by stealing her dream house. Dad's voice was getting louder with each word. How exactly was any of that helping? She's always been reckless with money. Remember when she bought that motorcycle in college? Or when she quit her corporate job to start her own business? She makes terrible financial decisions. She just bought an $850,000 house with cash, Dad exploded, while you were plotting to steal it from her. Who's making terrible decisions here, Claire? I held up my hand. There's one more thing you both need to know. They turned to look at me, and I could see the exhaustion in both their faces. This had been a lot to process in one afternoon. The client who stiffed me on the $200,000 payment? The one that triggered my cash flow problems and led to the bankruptcy filing? I paused for dramatic effect. It was David's cousin's company. The whole thing was orchestrated. They never intended to pay the invoice. It was all designed to put me in a desperate financial position, so I'd have to sell my shares to David for pennies on the dollar. Claire's face crumpled. Oh my God. Yeah, oh my God is right. I finished my coffee and set the mug in the sink. So while you two were planning to swoop in and rescue me from my financial problems, those problems were artificially created by people who were supposed to be my family and my business partner. Dad was quiet for a long moment, just staring out the window at my beautiful backyard. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured and controlled. Claire, I think you need to leave. Daddy? No, I think you need to leave my daughter's house, and I think you need to think very carefully about the choices you've made. Both of you." He looked at me. "Jess, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening." I walked over and hugged him, feeling like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. "It's okay, Dad. You couldn't have known. I should have trusted you. I've always known you were smart and capable, but I let Claire's manipulation change how I saw you." As Dad and I stood there in my beautiful new kitchen, Claire gathered her purse and headed for the door, but she stopped in the doorway and turned back. "What are you going to do about David?" I smiled. "Don't worry about David. I've got special plans for David." Monday morning came with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you want to conquer the world. I was up at 6 a.m., not because I had to be, but because today was the day I'd been planning for months. David Chen was about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong sister. I'd spent Sunday setting up my new home office in the Victorian's gorgeous third-floor turret room. Original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and 3 windows that gave me a perfect view of the neighborhood. It was like having my own castle tower, and I was about to rain down some medieval justice. My first call was to Marcus, my lawyer. "It's time to move forward with the fraud case against David. You're sure you want to do this? Once we file, there's no going back." And Marcus, the man tried to steal my business, manipulated my sister into spying on me, and orchestrated a fake bankruptcy to force me into selling my shares. Yeah, I'm sure. The evidence was overwhelming. Months of documentation, recorded conversations, text messages, and financial records that showed a clear pattern of fraud and conspiracy. David had been so confident in his plan that he'd barely tried to cover his tracks. My second call was to Janet Morrison at the FBI's white-collar crime division. No relation to my family, despite the shared last name, just one of those cosmic coincidences that makes life interesting. "Jessica, I've reviewed the materials you sent over. This is textbook wire fraud and conspiracy. The fake client, the unpaid invoices, the systematic client manipulation. We've got him. What's the timeline? We'll execute the warrant this afternoon. His office, his home, all his electronic devices. He won't see it coming. Perfect." David thought he was so smart, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed I was just another victim who'd roll over and take it. He had no idea he was dealing with someone who'd learned to fight dirty from watching him. But the best part of my revenge wasn't the legal case. It was what I'd been planning for Claire. At 11 a.m., I drove to Pinnacle Properties in my new Tesla. Yeah, I'd been treating myself to a few upgrades with my Google money. Claire's BMW was in the parking lot, which meant she was at work, probably trying to pretend like yesterday hadn't happened. I walked into the sleek, modern office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and that fake marble that's supposed to impress clients. The receptionist smiled at me with that practiced real estate smile. "I'm here to see Claire Morrison," I said. "Tell her it's her sister." Claire appeared from the back office within minutes, looking like she hadn't slept. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing the same outfit from yesterday. "Jess, what are you doing here? We need to talk, privately." She led me to a conference room and closed the door. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Look, about yesterday," she started. "Save it," I interrupted. "I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to give you a choice." I pulled out an envelope and set it on the conference table. Inside this envelope is a check for $100,000. Claire's eyes widened. "What?" "It's yours. No strings attached. Consider it a sister's gift." I paused. "But there are conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "First, you're going to delete every piece of information you've collected about me. Browser history, screenshots, files, everything. And you're going to show me your phone and computer to prove it's gone." Claire nodded slowly. "Second, you're going to cut all contact with David. Block his number, delete him from social media. Pretend he doesn't exist. That's easy. After what you told me yesterday, I never want to see him again anyway. Third," I continued, "you're going to write Dad a letter. A real letter, handwritten, explaining exactly what you did and why it was wrong. You're going to take full responsibility without making excuses or trying to justify your actions." Claire's hands were shaking. "And if I don't do these things?" I pulled out my phone and opened a video file. "Then this recording of our conversation at the coffee shop, along with all the text messages between you and David, gets sent to every member of our family, every person at your country club, and everyone in your real estate office." The color drained from her face. "You wouldn't. Try me. You spent months systematically destroying my reputation based on lies and manipulation. Turnabout is fair play. I stood up and pushed the envelope toward her. But here's the thing, Claire. Despite everything you've done, I don't actually want to destroy your life. I want you to learn from this and become a better person. The choice is yours. She stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Why are you giving me money? Because you're still my sister, and because Dad raised us to take care of family, even when that family doesn't deserve it. I moved toward the door. You have until 5 p.m. to decide. Choose wisely. As I left Pinnacle Properties, my phone rang. It was Marcus. It's done. FBI just arrested David at his office. They found everything. Fake contracts, forged documents, records of all the clients he tried to steal. He's looking at federal fraud charges. How long? If convicted on all counts, probably 15 to 20 years. I sat in my car for a moment, letting that sink in. 3 months ago, I'd thought David was my friend and business partner. Claire was just my annoying little sister who couldn't mind her own business. I'd been struggling to keep my consulting firm afloat and dreaming about buying a house I couldn't afford. Now David was in federal custody. Claire was facing the consequences of her actions, and I was sitting in my Tesla outside a real estate office, having just offered my sister $100,000 as an act of mercy. Life is wild, you know? My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Just heard about David on the news. Are you okay? I texted back. Never been better. Come over for dinner tonight? I'll cook in my new kitchen. Wouldn't miss it. As I drove home through the tree-lined streets of my new neighborhood, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't just about making the people who wronged you pay for their actions. Sometimes the sweetest revenge was succeeding so completely that their attempts to destroy you became irrelevant. David was going to prison. Claire was learning that actions have consequences. And me? I was going home to my beautiful Victorian house that I'd bought with my own money, to cook dinner for my father in a kitchen that was entirely mine. Yeah, I'd say that was pretty sweet justice. 6 months later, I was hosting my first official housewarming party in the backyard of my Victorian dream home. The spring flowers were in full bloom. I'd hired a caterer who did amazing things with small plates, and I'd invited everyone who mattered in my life. Dad was manning the grill. He'd insisted, saying my new outdoor kitchen needed to be properly christened. My business partner, Elena, David's replacement and 1,000 times better, was charting with my neighbors. My employees were actually having fun, which felt like a small miracle after everything we'd been through. And Claire was there too. She'd taken the deal, of course, deleted everything, cut contact with David, and written Dad a letter that made him cry. Real tears, not the manipulative kind we'd grown up with. She'd also started therapy, which was honestly the best decision she'd ever made. Nice spread, sis, she said, appearing beside me with a plate of the caterer's famous bacon-wrapped scallops. Thanks. How are things at the new job? After everything came out, Claire had quit Pinnacle Properties and taken a position with a smaller, more ethical real estate firm. The pay was lower, but she seemed genuinely happier. Less cutthroat, more focused on actually helping people find homes. Good. Really good, actually. I helped a young couple buy their first house last week, and they were so excited they cried during the closing. It felt... She paused, searching for the words. It felt like I was actually making a difference instead of just making money. I nodded, watching Dad flip burgers with the concentration of a man who took his grilling very seriously. And therapy? Hard, but necessary. Claire took a sip of her wine. Dr. Martinez says I have chronic comparison syndrome, mixed with some narcissistic tendencies that developed as a defense mechanism. Apparently, always being the perfect daughter made me terrified of anyone else succeeding because it threatened my identity. That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it does. Which is both enlightening and horrifying. She laughed, but it wasn't her old fake laugh. This one sounded real. I'm sorry, Jess. I know I've said it before, but I need to keep saying it. I was awful to you for years, and you didn't deserve any of it. I bumped her shoulder with mine. We're good, Claire. We're figuring it out. Elena appeared with a bottle of champagne and 3 glasses. Time for the toast? Definitely time for the toast. I called everyone over to the deck, where I'd set up a small microphone system. The 30 or so people in my backyard represented the life I'd built from scratch. Friends, colleagues, neighbors, and family who actually supported me. Thank you all for being here, I began, feeling surprisingly emotional. 6 months ago, I was going through what felt like the worst period of my life. My business was struggling, my family relationships were complicated, and I felt like everything I'd worked for was falling apart. I caught Dad's eye and smiled. He'd been nothing but supportive since the truth came out, and our relationship was stronger than it had ever been. But sometimes what looks like failure is actually just life clearing the way for something better. The challenges I faced led me to make changes I never would have made otherwise. I restructured my business, which made it stronger. I learned to value myself properly, which led to better relationships. And I bought this house, which gave me the space to host parties like this one. Everyone raised their glasses. So here's to new beginnings, second chances, and the kind of revenge that involves living your best life instead of tearing other people down. Cheers! As everyone sipped their champagne and went back to eating and mingling, Claire stayed beside me on the deck. "What happened to David?" she asked quietly. "Sentenced last month. 12 years federal prison, plus restitution. He'll be filing for bankruptcy for real when he gets out." I shrugged. "Turns out, federal judges don't like it when you systematically defraud multiple businesses and try to steal someone's life's work. Do you ever feel bad about it?" I considered the question seriously. "No, I feel bad that it came to that, but I don't feel bad about protecting myself and my business. David made his choices. I just made sure he faced the consequences." The party continued until well after sunset, with people gathered in small groups around my backyard, talking and laughing under the string lights I'd hung from the oak trees. It felt like a real celebration, not just of my new house, but of the life I'd built from the ashes of the old one. As the last guests were leaving, Dad helped me clean up while Claire packed up the leftover food. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," Dad said, loading plates into the dishwasher. "Not just for how you handled the David situation, but for how you've handled everything. You could have destroyed Claire's life, but you chose to help her become better instead. She's family," I said simply, "and she was being manipulated too, even if she was also doing the manipulating." Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway. "I heard that, and thank you. Again. You're welcome. Again." We finished cleaning in comfortable silence, the three of us working together in my kitchen like we were a normal, functional family, which maybe we were, finally. After Dad and Claire left, I walked through my house, turning off lights and putting away the last few things from the party. In the living room, I stopped in front of the fireplace where I'd hung a photo from the evening, all of us laughing on the back deck, glasses raised in celebration. 6 months ago, I'd been sitting at my parents' dining table, humiliated and hurt, watching my sister try to destroy my reputation for her own gain. Tonight, I'd hosted a party in my own home, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, celebrating not just my success, but my family's journey toward actually becoming family. The best revenge, I'd learned, isn't making your enemies suffer. It's building a life so good that their attempts to hurt you become irrelevant. It's choosing growth over grudges, success over spite, and love over revenge. But don't get me wrong, it doesn't hurt that David is in federal prison and I'm living in my dream house. Sometimes justice and happiness align perfectly, and when they do, it's absolutely beautiful. Thanks for sticking with me through this crazy story, guys. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of family drama and sweet justice, smash that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means everything, and I love reading your thoughts about these wild family situations. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because trust me, real life is often stranger than fiction, and there are always more stories to tell. Remember, sometimes the best revenge is just living your best life, but having a really nice house and a federal conviction for your enemies doesn't hurt either.